Hello, hi. Good morning, Prof.
Hello, nice to see you.
Hello, hi. Nice to see you, Prof. So it's very, very great to have you here. So how's everything in Auckland?
Oh, not too bad. We are in a lockdown with the
really?
pandemic. Yes.
Okay. Everything's quite better now here in Indonesia. So
okay.
We are not having a lockdown anymore. But hopefully next semester we are going to have the the conventional course. But the lecture is conducted online, still conducted online in Auckland.
Okay, right.
Right. Okay. Prof, hey, thank you very much for your attendance. And I think we have around 80 participants that would like to participate in our discussion. And actually, there are more than 150 participants registered for the sessions. And they comprised of many various levels. Some of them were final year of undergraduate students, the professors as well throughout Indonesia, and the accounting lecturers, as well as some practitioners as well. And before we proceed, Prof, I just would like to read a bit of our schedule here. And can we start the session, Prof?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for your attendance, and I really hope that this talk will find you very well in this difficult situation. And today we are very fortunate to have a very special professor, David Hay, and we scheduled this event for more than 3 months ago. And Alhamdulillah that he is currently available today, and we will be discussing about how the professional exam performance can be associated with the career success in audit. And this is a very interesting topic. And because on his research finding, he found that there is in fact an association between the professional exam performance and the career success. However, this is not happening when it is related to the audit quality, right, Prof? And Prof will also be discussing about the future of audit. And the schedule for this seminar will be comprising of, we are going to have 2 remarks, Prof, and our beloved dean will be conducting opening remark, and as well as from Dr. Dwi Ratmono as the head of Accounting Professional Association in Undip. Before we proceed, I just would like to invite Dr. Dwi Ratmono from Accounting Professional Education of Undip. Pak Dr. Dwi, are you there?
Hello, good morning, Pak Fuad.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good morning. Please, Pak Dwi.
Okay, maybe I will give a short remark. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Good morning, Pak Dwi.
Yeah. Okay, as the head of Content Professional Education Study Program, or in bahasa pendidikan profesi akuntan, first I would like to thank, of course, to Professor David Charles Hay from University of Auckland. We will present the theme of professional accounting exam education and career success. And if I'm not mistaken, also will present about the future of auditor profession. This topic is very relevant for our study program, yeah, in preparing professional accountant with class lecture for 2 semesters. And our students also required to take a certified public accountant exam, or CPA exam, and certification for professional accountant. And just for information that the Accountant Professional Education Study Program, or Pendidikan Profesi Akuntan of Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas Diponegoro has received recognition with a grade from Indonesian Institute of Certified Public Accountant. Thanks also for Dean of the Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas Diponegoro, Professor Suharnomo.
Yeah.
Who will deliver his remark at this event. Thank you, Prof. Suharnomo.
Yeah.
And
Sama-sama,
okay,
Pak.
yeah. Thanks also for the moderator, Dr. Fuad, Head of Accounting Department, and all audience participants of this event. Special thanks especially for accounting student organization or keluarga mahasiswa akuntansi for organizing this event. I think that's all that can I deliver the remarks. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Dwi. Next, we are going to invite our beloved Dean, Prof. Suharnomo, and he is a very busy person, and we are very happy to have him join in this event. Prof. Suharnomo, please, Pak.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Fuad. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning to everyone. First, as a dean, I would like to express my gratitude and welcome to Professor David Charles Hay from the University of Auckland, New Zealand, who was pleased to be a guest lecturer at the Accounting Forum organized by Accountant Professional Education, Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas Diponegoro. As we know that Professor David Hay is a professor of auditing with a great reputation in the field of research, so that he received the notable contribution to the Auditing Literature Award presented by the American Accounting Association. He is also the author of books on auditing and an author of about 50 articles in flagship journals. With this reputation, Professor David Hay will certainly provide many insights to the participants today in order to improve competence in the accounting field. In today's seminar, Professor Hay will present a paper entitled "Is Professional Exam Performance Associated with Career Success in Auditing?" The paper examines whether the exam performance of licensed professional auditor, certified public accountant, is associated with their subsequent career success and the quality of job performance. This paper is very relevant for us in understanding the important role of certification exam in increasing career success and performance as professional accountant. Ladies and gentlemen, during the pandemic circumstance, I am very grateful that we can still conduct the accounting forum program by online. There are lecturers, staff, and students from undergraduate and postgraduate attending this online event. Once again, thank you very much, Professor David Hay, as our speaker for today. Thanks, Pak Fuad, our moderator, and Pak Dwi Ratmono, who make this event happen. Hopefully that this pandemic situation will not affect our enthusiasm to continue learning and encourage us to look ahead to prepare for a better future. Finally, I would like to officially open this event. I ensure this event will be a very beneficial and fruitful for everyone here. Thank you, and I have a great discussion. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih, Pak Fuad.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, Dean. Okay, guys, before we proceed, and I just would like to introduce you all, Prof. David Hay. And as you may aware that several weeks ago, we have already invited Prof. Van der Stad from London School of Economics, Prof. James Olson, as well as Prof. Margaret Apenetsi from Melbourne. And we have discussed several issues ranging from management accounting to the financial accounting. And today, So this is a very fortunate even for us that we are able to invite Prof. David Hay to discuss the audit quality and how audit quality is affected by the exam professional proficiency. And as been previously mentioned by the Dean, David Hay is one of the great professor of auditing from the University of Auckland, New Zealand. And David won a 2017 notable contribution to the Auditing Literature Award presented by AAA, American Accounting Association. And he is also co-author of the recent reference book on auditing and auditing research. And David is currently the editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Auditing and also an editor of Auditing, a journal of practice and theory. And he was head of Department of Accounting and Finance at the University of Auckland. And he has been an external reviewer of accounting degree programs at more than 10 universities and similar institutions from New Zealand, Australia, Malaysia, Oman, and Hong Kong, and so on and so forth. And he has had extensive professional auditing experience and has been very active in professional accounting activities. He is a member of the New Zealand Auditing and Assurance Standards Board. Okay, without further ado, Prof. Hay, I think we can start the session, and we will divide. We are going to have the Q&A sessions at the end of your presentations, if you don't mind. And I think, Prof. Hay, time is fully yours. Thank you very much again, Prof.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Fuad, and thank you very much to the Dean and for the professional body. So I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to be with you in spirit anyway at Undip, and to be able to present my paper, and I'm looking forward to your comments. So let me share my screen and I'll begin the presentation. So you can see my screen, I hope, and this part is the main research paper that I'm going to be presenting. I'm really going to speak to you in two parts. The first part is a general talk about the future of auditing, which I think is a really interesting issue, and for people who aren't so closely related to the specific topic that I'm going to talk about, hopefully you'll get something from that part of the speech as well. But the two also relate to each other, but they are in two separate bits. So we're going to come to the professional exam performance and whether that's associated with career success for accountants in a few minutes. Let's talk first about just some general issues about auditing. I'm a professor of auditing, and I'm very positive and enthusiastic about auditing and its place in the world. And let's just look at how auditing is, where it is placed and what its future might be. So this is the future of auditing research, and it's also got a fair bit about the future of auditing research as well as the future of auditing. So here we go. So you've already seen my biography, but one of the things that I've done is quite recently written this book, The Future of Auditing, very short book. The future of auditing is still quite a big topic, but just covers some major issues in a fairly overview kind of way. And in case you're wondering, this is the University of Auckland. We're not there at the moment. Auckland City is in a lockdown. We're trying to keep cases of COVID-19 to a very low level. And at the moment, the university is doing everything online. I'm working from my office at home, and of course I couldn't travel to Indonesia, but we have a mixture of old historic buildings like this clock tower and modern buildings. This is the business school. My office is somewhere up here, if I was there. Let's have a look at auditing. I kind of think this is a walkway in the bush near University of Auckland, but I can imagine we're on this journey as auditors and we're going through this fairly shady environment, but I like to think the future is very bright. We're coming out of the shadows, and sometime soon, and auditing will be in a very good position. But we have to make sure we do the right things to get there. So auditing, I think, has a bright future. There's a lot of positive things to be said about auditing, as long as we do everything right. So unless we make a mistake, auditing should be a great career for our students and a very important part of the functioning of the world in future. And likewise, the same with auditing research. Auditing research has made a lot of progress in the last 20 years, but it's also at a crucial stage where things could get very much better for it, as long as we do everything right and we don't mess it up. So auditing research has a pretty bright future as well, unless we mess up. So that's a very brief idea of what I'm saying in the future of auditing part of my speech. So getting on to the topics a bit more, we're in a significantly changing world, and I'm sure you know that as decades go by, the world is quite a different place than what it used to be. But a lot of the changes are very positive for us, the accountants, and us, the auditors. A lot of things happening that make what we do a lot more relevant. And one of those is changes in population. This is just a graphic of a study of life expectancy. It's actually from a CNN news bulletin, but it draws on an underlying medical research article in the journal called The Lancet. And it just looks at what life expectancy is likely to be in a few years' time, only a few years' time from now, 2030. And it shows that people are living much, much longer. At the extreme, women in South Korea expected to have a life expectancy of over 90 years old by 2030. That's, you know, a very long life for someone to have. And even the countries that aren't doing so well on this chart, like say Serbia or Mexico, life expectancy is still increasing fairly substantially. And you might think, what does that have to do with auditing? Well, it can be quite relevant because people who live a long time, it's important to them that they look after their money, that they have life savings so that they're able to keep on supporting themselves when they're in their 80s, when they're in their 90s. And to do that, they need well-functioning investment markets. And part of having that is having reliable financial information. So the fact that people are living longer ought to increase the demand for auditing. So that's one reason why I think that auditing has a bright future. People are likely to be saving more money. They're likely to need the kind of accountability that comes from auditing. Another trend is income distribution around the world. I'm not sure if this one illustrates it very well, but it's a figure from the World Bank showing distribution of income in different countries in the world. And the point it's trying to make is that over the period they looked at, the high income countries have changed a little bit. They've got more wealthy than they were, but not hugely. The low income countries have done a little bit better, but in the middle, these middle income countries, their incomes have increased pretty substantially, so that in the world, as it was in the 20th century, there was a reasonably small number of countries that had large economies and a lot of wealthy people and tended to drive the accounting and auditing world. Now there's a lot more mid-sized countries such as Indonesia, Malaysia, India, that have got substantial middle-class populations, and we can probably expect to see auditing and accounting standards driven a lot more by the whole world as opposed to being driven purely by the European and English-speaking countries. So we'd expect auditing to become a bit more international. That's what I think will tend to happen over the next few decades. And third one, auditing isn't just important because people are living longer and because certain countries are getting wealthier. It's also being actively pushed, and particularly the World Bank, this is the World Bank logo here, is very positive about auditing. The World Bank has a lot of documents where they've written about the value of auditing to an economy, and you may have seen it in practice that if the World Bank is trying to make recommendations to improve the economy of a country, sometimes something that it will do would be to try and improve the auditing profession, or if it's a developing country that doesn't have auditors at all, it will try and establish a body of CPAs and try and make sure that there are auditing standards and high quality audits, because it seems to be the case that countries that have good audits have better economies, and in particular, they can recover from economic downturns a lot better. So auditing, it's not just me who says it's valuable, the authoritative bodies such as the World Bank think so as well. But there is a bit of a barrier to that. There's technological changes, and in some ways those help us in auditing, but they also barriers to change like this. So there's a lot of technology happening in the world of auditing. Maybe some of it is good for us, but maybe not everything. So accounting and auditing in the future. On this slide, I'm trying to show you, I guess, the positive and the negative. The left-hand illustration here, this is just a photo I took in a small town in New Zealand, and it's a chartered accounting firm, but they're trying to tell their clients, remove the hassles of receipts and invoices, no more data entry, and people should be using the kind of accounting software there is now, where all you need to do is get out your phone, take a photo of your lunch receipt, and the accounting software will be able to read that. It'll know what the amount is, and it'll know what the expenditure is for, and it will automatically debit it to the right account, meal expenses perhaps, credit the credit card or credit the bank account, and it's in your accounting system without all of that tedious data entry that there used to be. So that ought to make accounting more fun and auditing more practical. So technology is definitely working our way, even in small accounting firms in small places. The other illustration is kind of the more sinister idea that some people have about technology. So a lot of people feel that as technology comes along, instead of having an accountant wearing a suit and doing the auditing work, some kind of robot will take it. In reality, of course, not looking like this, but some kind of technology might take away people's jobs. And I guess we really can't be certain which trend is going to be the most effective, whether the easier and more friendly accounting will make auditing and accounting more useful. And I mean, it's better to be an auditor, so better for auditing careers, or will the increased technology undermine the work that auditors do and make it less likely to be a useful career? It's something we just don't know yet, but time is developing. And I guess there's a lot of careers in the world where it's very uncertain what the future might be. Auditing is just one of them. But we've got reason to believe that it could be a good thing for us, technology. So key points about the changing world of auditing. People are living longer, so they ought to be saving money, and they might need some kind of assurance, not auditing, some other kind of assurance. More countries reaching the ranks of the middle income countries, so there are more places in the world where savings are important, economics are important, business schools are important, and auditors are important. And there's technological changes, some of them good for auditing and some of them not so bad, not so good. But there's scope for auditing to be more important and more influential as time goes by. But the state of auditing, if you look around the world, there's a lot of pressure on auditing. Not sure how widely this is reported, but in the United Kingdom, for instance, in Britain, there's been a lot of auditing scandals in the last 2 or 3 years, and they've also had a lot of official inquiries into it. So there's a report called the Blyden Report that the British government commissioned, which recommends a lot of changes. So the Blyden Report says auditing is not broken, but it needs to be improved, something like that. And there's a very sweeping range of reforms that they're suggesting to auditing. Similarly, in Australia, the Australian Parliament has done an investigation into auditors, and they're very concerned about the quality of auditors. And I've been able to find other reports similar from other countries all around the world, such as South Africa and the Netherlands. So even though the auditing has got that bright future, and there's all these reasons why we think it should be having the best time ever and it should be leading to a great future, it's under pressure, it's getting a lot of criticism, and in a lot of countries, people think it needs to be improved a lot. And there's one major country where that doesn't seem to be the case, where people don't seem to be criticizing auditing, and that country is the United States. So I can give you a reference to an article by Roger Simnett giving a bit more detail about that. But it seems like the United States, maybe they've got auditing right. And if you know auditing, you may know that they've had these reforms called the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, also called SOX, that date from about 2001, and that scaled up the amount of auditing that needed to be done by audit firms a lot, increased their requirements such as reporting on internal control, and their auditing doesn't seem to be having the same problem. So does that tell us something? Maybe we should be following the Americans. And most countries haven't followed the United States in this area, but it's interesting that the countries that haven't, UK and Australia, are the countries where auditing is getting criticised. The other thing about auditing that's a concern that might mean it doesn't reach its bright future is the way audit firms are developing. The big four audit firms, well known around the world, but they've become more and more focused on their consulting work, and they're more and more likely to be firms where auditing might only be half of the work that's done, might even be less than that. Maybe auditing is only a third of the work that's done in a particular office, and 2/3 of it is consulting work, consulting on information technology, consulting on systems advice, all of that kind of thing. And audit firms don't do that so much for their own audit clients anymore, because that's considered to give rise to independence issues, but they still do the consulting work for other clients. And that's still a bit of a problem, because what if the audit firms end up being completely dominated by consulting? And some of them certainly seem to be going that way. So they might get to a stage where the top management of the auditing firm are all consultants. There's very few auditors involved, and the firm maybe won't treat auditing with as much importance as it should, and auditing might not get the best staff assigned to it, might not be an issue that the firm wants to make a stand on points of principle, and might not be looked after as it should. And one of the recommendations of that UK report, the Bryden report, was that audit firms should get rid of all of that consulting work altogether and just be audit firms that do auditing and nothing else. And the British do seem to be introducing that change. So it'll be interesting for the rest of us in the world to see what comes out of that and how that works. So the state of auditing has this bright future, apart from the fact that auditors are getting a lot of criticism for what they're doing at the moment, and apart from the fact that audit firms seem to be drifting in their focus away from auditing into other things. Regarding audit technology, we mentioned that before, but there's also a lot of information from within the firms themselves that auditors should use advanced technology more than they do. And if you notice this Deloitte survey, the users think that, the audit committees think that, the preparers of the financial statements think that. They think that auditors should use advanced technology more. And the ones who know the most about what the auditors are doing, namely the preparers, they're the most likely to think that. Users don't see what the auditors do so closely, and they don't have such a strong opinion. So it seems to be everyone's expecting auditors to rise to the occasion, use more technology, do more technology smart auditing than they do, and maybe they're slipping up in that area as well. Similar KPMG survey says the same kind of thing. And why don't the auditors leap in using technology as much as they should? Well, there is an issue of the auditing standards. Auditing standards certainly don't stop you from using audit technology, but they don't help an awful lot either. And the International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board has this data analytics group who have been working away on this issue, really without producing very much as far as I can tell. But they have come to this conclusion that the ISAs, the international standards on auditing that we all use, don't stop you from using modern data analytic techniques, but they don't really encourage them either. And if you know that ISAs, the international standards on auditing, you know that they pretty much imply that you're going to do particular audit procedures, that you're going to be sending out confirmations of accounts receivable balances and bank balances, or you're going to be attending inventory count and observing inventory counting. And so maybe auditors get frustrated and give up because they have got a new technology way that would avoid them having to do that procedure, but the auditing standards say, no, get back, do it the old way in the 20th century way, and you can't use your new technology. So that's something that auditors need to work on. And I know that the International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board is doing a big project on audit evidence at the moment, and I certainly hope they can overcome this problem. I highly recommend this book about auditing, about professions, if you're interested in the future. Susskind and Susskind's The Future of Professions. They both work at Oxford University. And it's the future of professions altogether, but it does have a section on auditing as a profession, and has a section on tax consulting as a profession. And those are extremely interesting to read. It also talks about the medical profession, the architecture profession, the law profession, and those are pretty interesting for us too. So if you're looking for something interesting to read that tells you about what your life might be like in a few years' time, I'd recommend it. Anyway, when it comes to auditing, they suggest that although auditors don't really recognize it yet, the time might come when high technology techniques and automated procedures will pretty much take over the audit function. Now, if you talk to audit partners, they certainly don't see it that way, and they're experts, they know a lot about it. They see themselves as saying there's so much judgment involved in doing an audit that you could never automate the process completely. But the Susskind and Susskind book points out that that's what all the professions say, that's what everybody thinks. And there are examples in, say, engineering, even medicine and law, where software technology and intelligent machines are actually able to make better decisions than individuals do. So making medical diagnoses, making judgment on what sentences to give to criminals. You have some software that does that. If it's programmed right, it might make more consistent and more useful decisions than an individual person does, even if he or she's a real expert that's been doing it for years and years. And that might be the case for auditing too. So this book goes on to say, none of the big four firms tried to disrupt the others by undertaking audit in a radically new way. Personally, I think that's a lot to do with the standards. They're following the standards, but these leaders in the profession also say, maybe it's just because there's no obvious incentive. The four firms know that the other three are all going to be following the standards, doing things the old way. There's no incentive for them to come up with something new. But that might be opening up a huge opportunity for the first firm that does come up with a new technology. Or it might be that something that's completely unexpected, like something new technology as in Amazon in retailing or Uber in transportation, maybe something new will come along and completely replace the auditing profession if the audit firms aren't able to keep up with technology. Okay, that's a lot of things to throw at you. One more is just the issue of global versus national auditing. So another barrier for auditing to a large extent is the regulation that we have. Independent regulation these days, but it's independent regulation set by each country. So in New Zealand, we've got the New Zealand Auditing and Assurance Standards Board writing the auditing standards, and the Financial Markets Authority inspecting the auditors, and they're accountable to the New Zealand government, and they do things within the New Zealand environment. In Australia, there's a different set of organisations, United States different again, Indonesia different, of course. Every country has their own way of doing it, and they all do it slightly differently. And maybe that makes it difficult for auditing to really achieve what it ought to, because if you're going to do innovations in auditing, you've got to make sure they meet the standards of every single country. So there's variations among countries, variations among different cultures, variations in quality, and the national regulation can only go so far, especially in the area of multinational business. So that leaves us, auditing still has these great opportunities, but has a few barriers, and I hope we can overcome them. One way that we might be able to do that is with better research. And something I've noticed over the last 10 years is that those standard setting boards, and I've done some work for the International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants, and I've been following what the International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board does, and I'm a member of the New Zealand board. All of those boards are certainly aware of universities and aware of university research, and they're becoming more and more interested in what they call evidence-informed standard setting. So being able to take something from some research and take that into account in setting their standards. So if they're setting standards on auditor independence, how much consulting should auditors do, maybe they'll want to look at some research that has been published in a good research journal that shows the effect of that on auditor independence. Currently, the IAASB is looking at group audits, smaller audits of less complex entities, and audit evidence, and maybe there's some relevant research that we can tell them about that would help that. And the IAASB is trying to include a research stage where the work that we do as academic researchers might have a chance to be taken into account. So there's opportunities there for us, but it's still quite hard. Those auditing standards board people are not professors usually, they're practitioners, so they've got, you know, a long time, like maybe 30 years career as an auditor, and they know a lot about that. But of course, they've usually only got 30 years within one firm, within one particular setting. They don't know about the whole world. They don't know about audits outside their own firm. So there's scope for them to learn from research, but the research has to be presented in a way that's useful to them. So they probably can't read a research paper like the one I'm going to present shortly and get as much out of it as you could if you're academics who've done postgraduate study. And there needs to be a bit of a stage where the researchers can interpret the research and explain to the standard setters, this is what our research says, and this is how it can help you in the standard setting process. So research and auditing could be really important, could be really relevant, but we do have to take that opportunity to make it clear to the standard setters why it's relevant. So summing up the future of auditing, future of auditing research is going to be more influential, but we have to work hard to establish these bridges between the researchers and the standard setters. Maybe we can even do research about the standard setters and find out just how they make decisions, and we can help them. And expanding into wider areas. There's a lot more areas where there's some kind of assurance practice, such as assurance of sustainability reporting or assurance of internal control that's going on. So that's the future of auditing part of the presentation. I'm just going to take a sip of water. So I'll be very interested in comments that you have and where you are. You might see things that I don't see, and you might have other advantages from your perspective that we might be able to talk about. But we'll do that at the end. Let's go on to the research paper presentation. And so this is the research paper that I'm here to present. And here we go. So I showed you some slides at the start of New Zealand. In this case, the study's actually set in Finland. And there's a good reason why it's set in Finland, which I'm going to tell you about, but it's a very fascinating place. So that's the university that I work at when I'm visiting Finland. That's Aalto University. It's in a city close to Helsinki in Finland. And although my main position is Professor of Auditing at the University of Auckland, I'm also a visiting professor at Aalto University, this place, the one in the photo. And when the world's normal and we're able to travel, I'd normally go there once or twice a year and spend some time working with them. Now, Finland, it's the other side of the world. It's kind of a remote corner of Europe. Why do I like it so much? Well, it's very beautiful, but it's got a huge advantage for business researchers because they have very good access to data. So in a lot of countries, New Zealand, for instance, but also all of the English-speaking countries that I'm aware of, it's very hard to get information about individual people. So if I wanted to study something about CPAs and their exam results in New Zealand, the people running the exam would give me very little information. They might be able to tell me how many people have passed. They might be able to tell me what the average grade was, but they wouldn't tell me anything about the individuals. In Finland, my colleagues can go to the authorities and say, tell me the grades, what mark did everybody get in the exam? And they could get the list of all of the people who've sat the auditing exam for the last 30 years and what is their mark? So how did they do in the exam? And because that's a really unusual bit of data to be able to get, we're able to do this research study and do things that most people in most countries couldn't do. So we know who sat the exam and we know what mark they got. Then we can say, how did that turn out for them? Did the people who got good marks go on to be the most successful accountants. And in a lot of countries in the auditing profession, the most successful people are the partners in the big four firms. Very highly prestigious, they're very well paid, and they're very influential. So we say, do these people have successful careers and go on, become partners in the firm? But we can go further than that. The Finnish data also means that we could go to the taxation authorities and say, we've got a list of all the people who passed the exam, tell us what their salaries are. And that information is actually available. I don't know of many other countries where that is possible, but we now have their income data. So we can say, how did someone do in the exam? Did they end up getting an above average income if they had an above average mark? So that's pretty terrific. And then we've got a lot of financial accounting information as well. So we can also do the third part of the study. If they did well in the exam, do their clients have high quality financial statements, or do they have high quality audit reports? So we can say, is professional exam performance associated with career success for accountants? When we've got really good measures for career success, did they get promoted to partner? How much money did they make? How good were they at doing their job? And it's a fairly unique setting and a really interesting question to look at. Let's tell you a bit more about it. So is professional exam performance associated with career success? Now, everywhere that I know of, there is some kind of CPA exam. So Indonesia, New Zealand, Finland, United States, England, there's some kind of exam. So you can't go out to be an auditor of major companies without some kind of professional certification. So the professional exams are nearly always required. So people think they're useful. And that's by the law of each country usually specifies certain companies have to be audited, and they have to be audited by a licensed auditor, registered auditor, qualified auditor, something like that. So the national law says that, but it's also in the international standards. The International Federation of Accountants has education standards, and they don't exactly spell it out that there should be a CPA exam, but they make it pretty unlikely that you could have a profession any other way. So there's always professional exams. Are they a good thing? Do they tell you who's going to be a good auditor and who isn't? Well, it's a good question to ask, I think. Do those exams actually tell you who are the good accountants and the bad accountants? Do they tell you who's going to succeed in their client, in their profession or not? A long time ago, it was the early 1990s, I was involved in professional exams. I was involved in professional exams in New Zealand, and I was the chief examiner of what we called the final qualifying exam, which was an exam people had to pass to become a chartered accountant. And I'd try and get feedback from how people had done on the exam. And of course, people wouldn't talk to me, but if I talked to maybe students who had friends who'd taken the exam, they'd get a bit of feedback. And the people who failed the exam often felt that it wasn't a very fair measure of what they'd done. They'd say, yeah, I'm a good accountant, but I didn't pass the exam. There must be something wrong with the exam. So having that in the background makes me think, I'd really like to know whether a professional accounting exam is a measure of someone being a good accountant or not. So does that exam measure future career success? Because what else could the exam be for? Maybe it's just there to restrict the number of auditors. And that's what those people who failed the exam would be thinking. We don't have this exam to make sure we have high quality auditors. It's just to restrict the number of auditors, and then they'll have better incomes. And it's really just something to protect the market. And they're not the only people who think that. There's leading economists all the way back to Adam Smith and The Wealth of Nations suggests that if you have a professional licensing exam and a profession that sets it up, the profession is probably doing it to try and restrict entry and increase its income. And another famous economist, Milton Friedman, he's written some research papers in the 1950s about a similar kind of issue. So people might think that these exams don't measure future success. They're just a way of restricting the number of people who enter the profession. And it may be that exam success measures something else. Maybe exam success just measures how good you are at sitting still and answering an exam. The New Zealand one was 2 3-hour exams in the same day. It was a long endurance test. Maybe it just tests whether you can keep up answering questions for that long. Maybe. Or maybe it measures other characteristics, just good memory or something like that, that might not be related to your accounting. And also, career success might depend on other things. So does your career success just depend on how good you are at answering the exam questions? Probably not. When I talk to the accounting firm people who interview our graduates, what do they think is important? They're inclined to think that what's important are what they call the soft skills, so communication skills. Is this person good at writing reports? Is this person confident enough to ask the right questions of the clients when they're auditing them? Is this person polite and charming enough that they'll get on with the clients and not upset them and make them angry? Maybe those are the kinds of things that make a successful auditor. Maybe it's something to do with being a good salesman. Maybe the successful ones are the people who can sell the firm's services to the clients. So maybe career success depends on these things, not on whether you're good at the exam. And career success could also depend on completely unrelated things like ethnicity. In countries with different ethnic groups, maybe some of them are favoured more than others, or some of them prefer to go into that profession. Gender, we're going to see in my study, we do look at men versus women and whether things work out differently. So all kinds of things like that could be important. So is professional exam performance associated with career success? I'd like to say that it's definitely a question worth examining. Maybe we'll find out that it is, maybe we won't. So to do that examination of the question, we've got exam results for a very long period, whether the people are appointed as a partner, as I told you, the income of auditors, or their client portfolio, whether they get big or small clients, and their audit quality. And what do we find? People who pass the exam with higher marks, yes, they do have career success. They're more likely to become Big Four partners. So the people who get the best marks in the exam, more likely to become partners. People who just scrape through with the lowest marks, some of them become partners, but not as many. So it's definitely, the exam is measuring who are the good accountants. If being promoted, it tells you they're good accountants. Those who pass the exam with higher marks, they're better paid, they make more money. So that's another measure that the exam measures their career success. So they're better accountants in the fact that it's good for them, but then do they do better audits? Do their clients have better audit quality? No, they don't. So I guess the question's still open. Does the exam do something useful for them? Going back to my experience with the people who didn't pass the exam, if those people who failed the exam, if I was able to talk to them, I've got to go back in time 30 years to the early 1990s and say to them, hello, I'm the chief examiner, you just failed the exam. But we know that people who do well in that exam are more likely to become a partner. People who do well in that exam are going to get paid more. So we know it's a good measure of whether they're good accountants. They'd probably accept that. They'd probably say, okay, fair enough. If I didn't do well in the exam, maybe I wasn't going to be a good auditor anyway. But then I'd have to say to them, but actually maybe you would be just as good an auditor because audit quality is no higher. And that's a bit of a concern, isn't it? So that's a very brief overview of what we're going to get to in the results, but so that you can really understand that and so that you can ask me questions about it, I need to show you how I got there. So just recapping the issues that we're looking at. These professional exams, are they there to protect the public interest? That's certainly what the professional body is saying. AICPA is the American Institute of CPAs. They've got statements saying that we have the CPA exam to protect the public. This is the International Accounting Education Standards Board. They say the same thing. Most of the professional institutes around the world will say something like that. They don't just have a professional exam because everybody else does. They think that they're protecting the public, the people who use financial statements. But there's that cynical argument, maybe those exams are just to restrict entry to the profession. And that argument has support going back a long way in economics. There's also issues of gender differences. So do men and women get treated differently? I certainly thought they would have, but we'll find out. And these alternative explanations, maybe career success depends on other things. These things, soft skills, networking, personal characteristics. There's another research paper recently published that talks about elite reproduction. So when the firms are selecting people to become partners, what the partners are trying to do is copy themselves. So if all of the partners in the firm are men and they're of a particular religion, they're more likely to want to choose other partners of that same religion to become that. Also, things that aren't related to work. So if all the partners like to play golf, then they're probably going to think we need more partners who play golf. And that particular firm, being someone who plays golf, will be good for your career prospects. And another firm, I don't know, it might be photography, and all of the partners do photography. If you're not into photography, it won't be good for your career. So there's alternative explanations that might have nothing to do with the exam. So it's worth looking at whether these exam results do have a connection to exam success, career success. Previous research on the issue, there's not a lot because most people don't have the access to such excellent data as we do. In the USA, there is a change that people often examine. So 20, 30 years ago, they introduced what they call the 150-hour requirement. And that meant people have to do 5 years of university education to take the CPA exam in the United States. So, you know, that's a lot. They have to have a master's degree before they can be considered to be a CPA. And that changed. They went from a 4 years to 5 year requirement. They introduced it slowly, state by state, not all at once. So there were certain times when some states like New York and California had already introduced this requirement, but others like Florida hadn't. Maybe it was the other way around, but that kind of thing. So they could then study whether there's a difference state by state. So did auditing get better in states that had adopted this change sooner? Did audit fees get higher in states that had adopted this change? And the results really don't tell us much because there's using such a broad way of studying it. State by state, of course, there's a difference between incomes in New York compared to Florida. There's probably automatically a difference between audit quality as well in a big city like New York compared to some smaller states like Alabama or Mississippi. And the results are very mixed. And if you look at this literature, there's kind of conflicting views. Some people finding a study saying, yes, this change led to higher quality and it didn't cost anything more. Other people finding the opposite, saying it led to higher audit fees and didn't lead to better quality. So the USA isn't really helping us much apart from saying, yes, there's some previous research. What we can look at instead is to look at other occupations. So what are some other professional occupations that have regulated? Well, there's studies about the profession of dentistry. And in this case, it's again in the United States, they had some data from people who joined the armed forces. So people who joined, this was the Air Force in this case, people who joined the Air Force all got given a dental exam. They all had their teeth looked at. And the Air Force kept statistics on what states they came from and whether their teeth were better. And then there's some economists who were able to look at which states had tougher regulations on dentistry. So if it's harder to be a dentist in some state, does that mean that the military recruits in that state have better teeth? And the answer is no. It did mean the dentists got higher income in that state. So this tougher state regulation made a difference, but they didn't lead to better teeth. So if that applies in auditing, you might expect that auditors, when there's a tougher exam, would have higher incomes, but it wouldn't necessarily mean better auditing. I wonder if we'll find something like that. In medicine, there's studies saying performance in the licensing exams is correlated with better patient outcomes and fewer complaints. So doctors who've done better on their licensing exams seem to do better, but maybe that doesn't really help us all that much, because in the medical profession, your exam score has a lot to do with what job you get. So the doctors who've done the very best in those exams also get the best jobs. So they're working in the best hospitals with the best facilities. So maybe they get better patient outcomes because they're working with better colleagues, or because they have better equipment, something like that. So we can't be certain that the better performance in the medical exam does make them better doctors, but at least there's some evidence that that happens in that profession. And in teaching, in the United States again, they have a licensing test to become a teacher, and the people who do better in the licensing test go on to be better teachers, but only for some ethnic groups. So that works for white teachers, but not for black teachers. And why that would be, I don't know. Maybe these minority ethnic teachers, the African-American teachers, have some kind of teaching skill that isn't picked up by the exam, and that's why their results aren't. But for the European teachers, there is this kind of link. So their way of teaching is measured by exams. Who knows? It needs more research. And then finally, there's also an exam for school principals, and once again, making people who do well on the exam don't turn out to be better school principals. And it does have this disadvantage that it means the minority groups don't get the chance to be school principals, and that might not be very fair or even good for the children involved. So research about other occupations definitely suggests that there's other occupations where there's a professional exam and people can do well on it, but it doesn't necessarily make them better at their profession. So it's worth looking at this when it comes to auditors. So there we go, our research questions. Does performance in the exam relate to more successful career outcomes, such as promotion to partner, income, bigger clients, better audit quality? So these are our hypotheses. So we've got null hypotheses that they're not associated with career success, not associated with audit outcomes. And then we've got this issue of gender. We didn't initially start off looking at gender, but it turned out to be important that women CPAs seem to be getting different results. So we added a hypothesis about that. So Finland, here we are again, just looking at a business area in Finland, very modern city, and they tend to have beautiful modern buildings, but also a mixture of old buildings. This is the cathedral in the centre of the city. And snow's on the ground once again, everyone's walking around fully wrapped up. They really like it when it's winter. They like snow and they like their winter sports. What do we know about Finland apart from that? It's got 3 types of certification. So they've got KHT auditors, HT or HTM auditors, and JHT auditors. We don't need to worry about this too much, just to say that we're concentrating on the top level. These are the highest qualified CPAs. They can audit listed companies, they can audit public interest entities. They've got a master's degree, they've got 3 years work experience plus a qualifying exam. So they're the real cream of the crop. They're the best auditors, and they're the people you would expect to be partners in big 4 firms and to be auditing the very top companies. So we're focusing on them. In case you're wondering, KHT stands for that, and I don't speak Finnish. I'd really rather not try and say that, but it's Authorised Public Accountant in Finland. Looking at the Finnish economy and the Finnish exams over the period of our study, we go back all the way to 1980. Mention that's a long time ago. And things have changed since then. The blue line, for instance, is the development of Finland's economy. Notice they had a big downturn round about there. back in the early 80s, Finland, kind of dominated by Russia, even though Finland was a democratic capitalist country, not part of the Soviet bloc. It's right next door to Russia, and Russia had a lot of influence on it, and it tended to be very bureaucratic, not very international. Round about here, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, it went through a big burst of economic reform. And at first that was really successful, and the economy grew very quickly, but a lot of things went wrong quite quickly, and they had a big downturn and took a while to pick up again. And sometime round about here, they joined the European Union. That, I think, has been very good for them, although things have leveled off lately. So, you know, it's an economy with a few ups and downs, but they're in a fairly favourable position. They have very good manufacturing industries, and they're part of Europe, which gives them an advantage in terms of trading with all the other European countries. Over that period, while this has been happening, the number of people wanting to be CPAs has been up and down like anything. And it doesn't seem to be directly related to the economy, although maybe a little bit, so that when the economy has a downturn, more people decide they want to be CPAs. That's the kind of thing I've noticed in New Zealand, that when there's something wrong in the economy, it makes people think, I want to be an auditor. Maybe there's a lot of news about companies collapsing or something like that. Same kind of thing here. Anyway, it goes up and down a lot. And then the grey line is the number of people who pass the exam. Notice that it goes up and down, but not quite as much. So when the number of people sitting the exam goes up, the number passing doesn't go up quite as much. So that kind of suggests that the people setting the exam are trying to smooth out the number of people entering the profession. So maybe it doesn't depend on your ability after all. Maybe they are trying to restrict entry to the profession. Interesting. There's only so much we can tell from these kind of descriptive statistics. It just gives you an idea of where we're at with this country. And there it is. Another snowy day, and I was walking on a pathway. It's the sea next door. The sea freezes over, and you can walk on the sea in a lot of parts of Finland. How do we do this? We've got all these exam results for individual people, remember, but the mark required to pass the exam varies from year to year. So we clump these results into stanines. Stanines is just standardizing the results into 9 groups. So we put the people's results into 9 categories. So the first lowest 1/9, and the second 1/9, and so on. And that's well accepted in this kind of study, particularly educational exam results. You don't look at people's raw exam results because those will vary from year to year. You're grouping them into categories. So we've got these results in stanlines, and they're designed so that the stanlines are consistent from year to year with a consistent mean and a consistent standard deviation. Then we do our different types of regression, logic regression of whether they're promoted to partner, ordinary least squares regression of the client and the income data, and then 2 kinds of regression with the discretionary accruals, kind of a measure of their clients' accounting quality, and going concern opinions, which is a measure of their own audit quality. So we're asking these questions, which I think we've been through several times, so I think you know what's coming up there. So becoming a partner, we've just got an equation like this that we're estimating, but we've got data for the exam score measured in these stanines, whether the person is a woman or a man, an interaction between the exam score and their gender. Finland is mainly people who speak Finnish, but they do have a fairly substantial language minority of people who speak the Swedish language. And those Swedish people are historically quite important in accounting. So if you go a long way back, like 100 years ago, the chartered accounting profession was mostly dominated by the Swedish speakers. So they're the traditional business people. Now they're a much smaller minority and they don't have such an influence, but they're still important in business. We also control where they come from. The capital city, Helsinki, is a very large dominant city. So Helsinki and the cities nearby has a very large amount, maybe about half of the population. So the big companies tend to be based there. So you might expect people with an accounting career are kind of having a different career in Helsinki than they are if they're in a small town somewhere else. And then whether people got through the exam all in one go or not, that's important as well. We measure that with this partial completion variable. So this is just people who took more than one attempt to get the full pass of the exam. So we're looking at that test. We've got 1,142 observations. Now that's all of the CPAs who passed the exam from 1980 to 2015. It's not actually a very huge number, but it's not a very huge country either. The population of Finland is about 5 million. So it's a similar size to New Zealand, and of course, much smaller than Indonesia. So the test auditing board has given us the test scores for these over 1,000 people, and we've got those other variables that we need to measure what's going on. And here we go, just looking at our stanines. So these are the auditors clumped into these 9 groups. So these are the stanines, 1 to 9. And we can see that in the lowest stanine, there's 50 people in this lowest group. 40% of them are female, 10% of them are Swedish speakers, 52% of them live in the capital city, 44% of them took more than one go. They've had average careers of 13 years, and only 12% of them become partner. And as we move up through the stanines, some of these things change and some of them don't. Particularly, you notice that the capital area does change. So 52% of the people with the lowest scores are in the capital area. As we go up, it's 56% in the next one, 54, 55, 56, till we get up to areas in the 60s for the top groups and 70% for the top 9. So the top accountants live in the capital city and go there to make their fortune, presumably. Either that or being in the city means they've had a lot more learning experiences and they've learned something that helps them in the exam. And that's actually significant. It's significantly different, your exam result, depending on whether you live in the city or not, in the capital city. Partial completion has a bit of an effect as well. So as we go through the stanines, mostly it's a downward trend. Strangely enough, these people at the very top, maybe they failed it last time, so they worked extra hard, and that's why they get the very best exam results. But mostly it takes you more than, if you get through on the first attempt, you're going to be up here in the top level, and that's marginally significant. But look at this one, being promoted to partner, only 12% of the bottom group make it to partner, 17.6% of the next group. Something strange happens with the third group, even less of them get promoted than any other group. But after that, it tends to be an upward trend, and particularly if you compare the bottom and the top. 12% of the bottom group make it to partner, 30% of the top group make it to partner. So if you know someone who's about to sit the CPA exam, tell them, do well in that exam. People who do well in that exam have a much better chance of making it all the way to partner, if that's what the person's ambition might be. So that's really just a univariate test, but I think it tells us something. Interestingly, you'll notice that there's no particular pattern about the women. There's 40% here, there's 32% there. The trend is up and down, and it's not significant. Same thing with the Swedish speakers and the number of years experience that they've got. Now we look at the logistic regressions, which is that all of these things controlled for each other. And we do it step by step, adding different variables at a time. So the first one we add is exam score. Yes, that significant exam score is related to becoming audit partner, and that's true all the way through. Female is negatively related to becoming a partner, and that's true most of the way through. Swedish is positively related. Swedish people do seem to make partner more quickly once you've controlled for the other things. Being in the capital area is not. Partial completion is negatively related. So the women do less well. In this final study here, it's a little bit, final sample here, model 6, we've got a slightly different study because we're looking at an interaction. So this is the effect. Exam score 1.55 is what effect the exam score has for the men. And this is for the exam score for the women. So the men have a positive effect. The women, it's pretty much nothing at all, but if anything, a negative effect. So the women don't get treated so well. And why that is, of course, I guess we have to ask the Finnish people exactly what's going on, but it's quite a striking result, and we're going to see it coming up again and again. Just to talk about Finland a little bit more, it is not a place where women are generally badly treated. Women are generally quite well treated. The Prime Minister is a woman, and quite a lot of her cabinet are women. It's one of the first countries in the world where women were able to vote, and generally you certainly see women in all kinds of occupations that you might not in other countries. So you see women security guards, as well as women chartered accountants, women cabinet ministers. Women seem to be in all kinds of occupations. So it's a little bit surprising that they seem to be discriminated against in the accounting profession. So results for becoming a partner: positive relationship with exam score, do well in your exam, and you should be more likely to become a partner. Something strange going on with these women, and maybe that's something that happened in the 80s and 90s and won't be quite so bad when we get into the current time. So that's the discussion. We know that. So that was question 1. If you're ready, we'll look at question 2. Auditor income. Here we have a straight regression model. We call the variable for auditor income compensation. So it's the log transformation of the income of the people. And we're estimating, is it related to the exam score? Is it related to whether they're men or women? Same interaction, same other variables here. But then we've got a few more things that we include in there. So does their experience make a difference? Does their portfolio of clients make a difference? Does the average size of their clients make a difference, or how risky their clients are? And then CEO and BOD. What if the auditor has an important position in the firm? So they might be the chief executive officer of their particular branch of the audit firm, or they might be on the board of directors of the whole firm. Or they might be an industry specialist. And because these things go up and down from year to year, we've got a fixed effects in there for a year that we're looking at as well. So we're looking at people's income year after year after year. So we're controlling for that too. Let's look at the very simple results as we did for the promotion partner one. Here we go again, dividing these things up into the Stanines. Notice here our data is only from 2003 to 2015. So we can't get the income data all the way back to the 1980s. We can only go up to now, and we can only start in less than 20 years ago. But that's still quite a lot of years and quite a lot of observations. So partners can be in here more than once, of course, so they might have several years of income. What are we discovering? If they're in the lowest Stanine, they've got the lowest exam score, they're in this group, and the average, the log of their compensation is 11.257, tends to go up a little bit. Doesn't look like it's increasing much, but if you want to recalculate that back from a log, it's a few thousands of euros. So it's a significant difference, and yes, statistically significant too. So the people who do better in the exams are getting better exam results. People who do better in the exams have also got bigger portfolios, so they've got a portfolio, more substantial portfolio of clients. So it's total assets of their clients that they're auditing. So they're probably doing bigger audits or doing more of them. This one is the average size of their clients, and that's definitely higher. So they're doing bigger audits. And there isn't much of a trend here, maybe a little one, in terms of probably doing riskier clients as well. And the chief executive, board of director ones, industry specialization, they don't seem to make much difference. It's just a bit of exploration. If we look at the regression model, here we go looking at exam score in relation to income. Yes, it's significantly related. Let's just look at these 7, 8, 9, and 10 models first. Significantly related to exam score. Negatively related to female if we don't include that interaction term. If we do include the interaction term, then we can say this is the effect for a man who's an auditor. This is the effect for a woman who's an auditor. So they're not getting a positive effect. And then when we look at these other things, some of the people in our study are partners, some are not. Partners get paid more, well, that makes sense. The Swedish people don't normally. People in the capital area have a higher income in general. And those other variables, some of them are interesting too, but let's not get stuck on them. Another way of looking at this is to separate out the results by the men and the women, and that's what we're doing in model 11 and 12, and that makes it even clearer what's going on. Yes, the exam score is related to the income for the men. No, it's not for the women. And it is related to being a partner, so a woman partner gets paid more than a woman non-partner, but they're still not getting that relationship to the exam score that we're looking for. The Swedish partners get paid a little bit more if they're men, a little bit less if they're women. In the capital area, good to be a woman there, but not in the rest of the country. So discussing that, auditors receive higher incomes if they have higher exam scores. Once again, this result, which we didn't really want about the men, but not the women, but you can't ignore it. And if you have higher exam scores, you have larger portfolios, higher average size. Another office building in Helsinki. This is actually the State Treasury, and this is where the office that supervises auditors is based. So really an inspiring building, but that's where the people who inspect the auditors are based. And when I went to visit them, I took a photo so we could have a look. Notice they've got the sign in Finnish, in Swedish, in English. Okay, measure of audit quality. How do we measure audit quality? Basing it on what a lot of other audit studies do, we're using a discretionary accruals measure. So what are accruals after taking account of what we might expect them to be? And once again, we're using our same variables as we did in the previous study, adding a few more. In this case, we're adding a few more variables about the company. So the company's leverage, whether the company's making a loss, company's Z-score, whether it's in financial difficulties. This half equity is a Finnish thing. The auditors have to make a special report if the company's reduced its equity to half of what it started with. So that's another financial distress measure. Whether they're a December balance date, because that could be a busy season issue, and the year in the industry. And then we do a similar model for audit opinions. So discretionary accruals is something to do with measuring the financial statements. Audit opinions is something to do with how critical the auditors are. And we want to see if there's a relationship. And we'd like to think more discretionary accruals is not a good thing. So discretionary accruals means the auditors are letting the companies manipulate their financial statements a little bit more. So if the discretionary accruals are higher, that's not a good thing. So we're hoping that exam scores will be negatively related to discretionary accruals. When it comes to the going concern opinions, we'd like to think that issuing a going concern opinion shows that you're an independent auditor, you're brave enough to do something the company doesn't want you to, and you're high quality enough to identify that situation as necessary. So we'd expect that there'd be a positive relationship, higher exam scores, more going concern audit opinions. Let's have a look at what we found. So this is just the audit opinions one. So MAO is modified audit opinions. Oh, and this is the discretionary accruals. And the discretionary accruals, we look at them box by box. 0.132 for the lowest level of auditors. Stays around about the same, gets a little bit higher, and gets to its very highest for there and there. So more discretionary accruals, although it's not significant. So the higher quality auditors seem to have clients with higher discretionary accruals, and that means lower quality auditing, if anything. Not significant, so we can't really say it's anything much, but it doesn't look like there's much going on, and we can't really say that people who do better in the exam are have clients with better accounting. So, not what we wanted to see, but interesting. And then the line above that is the modified audit opinions. And there, it's again, not too much of a trend. It's more or less the same for the top and the bottom. Wavers about a little bit in between. Statistical test says there's a little bit of a significance. So auditors are slightly better if they've got higher exam results, but there's not a lot in it. Taking our regressions approach and looking at the discretionary accruals, we've got just this one result here, model 17, where the exam score, yes, it is positively related to discretionary accruals, and that's positively related. Discretionary accruals are worse. And no result for the others. No difference between the men and the women as far as this one's concerned. Partners seem to have slightly worse, believe it or not. And there's no difference between the Swedish people, slightly worse discretionary accruals in the capital area. So this is where we start to say, do these exam results relate to career success? Do they relate to being a better accountant? They don't seem to. If anything, they relate to being not quite so good at limiting the discretionary accruals for the clients, but really there's not much in it. So exam scores don't seem to come through to having an effect on this part of the auditor's work. This one's the results for audit quality modified opinions. And once again, nothing much. No significant results. Doesn't make a difference if you're a woman. Partners in this case are doing better, so the partners are more likely to issue a modified opinion for the men partners anyway. In the capital area, they're slightly less likely to, but that might be to do with more risky companies being based in the capital area. So that's our modified audit opinions result. So discussion of that. Little or no association between exam results and audit quality. One significant result for discretionary accruals, but it goes in the opposite direction. And no significant results for modified opinions. So putting all that together, and that's a lot of statistical analysis and a lot of different issues for you to think about, you can try and sum this up by saying, do professional exams measure the quality of accountants? I guess it's, yes, they do, but with definite limitations. So yes, better accountants are more likely to be promoted to partner, and professional exams are associated with that. Yes, better accountants probably get paid better, and professional exams are associated with that, but not so much with the actual output of the work. And when the professional bodies are saying in their auditing standards or their professional entry standards that they need these professional exams to ensure the quality of financial reports, the evidence isn't supporting them as far as this study goes. So it's, yeah, an issue that's a little bit of a concern. Who would be concerned about that? Well, those professional bodies. If you're the Institute of CPAs, in New Zealand, we actually have the Chartered Accountants Australia New Zealand as our main professional body. If you were that body and you're in charge of setting the professional exams, maybe you'd think, do we need to change our exam? Should we have a different kind of exam? Do we even need an exam? Maybe people should be selected based on their professional experience or something like that. Important to regulators, people who want to make sure that financial reporting quality is better, the people who inspect the work of auditors, they ought to be concerned. Just an accountant yourself, anyone who's passed the exam. Often when I show this study to people who are chartered accountants, they tell me something about their own results, and sometimes they'll say something like, you know, I'm a partner and I'm working on some of the very biggest clients, and I only just got scraped through the exam. I got a very low mark, but I still got through, and it worked out fine for me. And I have to say, well, you're an exception. That's not what the research shows. And other times I'm talking to people who have done very well in the exam and also have very good careers. And well, that helps. But those kind of anecdotes don't tell us a lot. And as far as researchers go, I think this is a very good question. It's important for us to try and have relevant research. In the first part of my talk about the future, we were saying that the standard setters want research that's relevant, research that's helpful to them in the standard setting process, research that's going to help them make the quality of auditing better. And this, I guess, raises a big question for them. Is the exam doing what it should? And is the exam fair to different groups? So yeah, just questions. Are exams a restriction on entry? What is career success? So you could definitely think about those issues. And I sometimes wonder about that. Are those exams there as a restriction on entry? Are those exams there as a quality control measure? Are they something else? Maybe they're just a way of motivating people to study hard, and whether the mark on them might not be that important. And you might say to yourself, and please do if you want to, what is career success? Professor David, you're saying that career success means being a partner and having more money, but that's not what it takes, and I can definitely relate to that. We're all university lecturers or university professors, and you know, we probably aren't the best paid people in our community. You go into a job like becoming a researcher because you're interested in research, because you're interested in making the world a better place. You probably would be better off, I don't know, working in a merchant bank or something like that. And money was the only thing that drove you. So maybe career success isn't to do with money. Maybe it's to do with these people are happy or not.
Halo, mohon di-unmute.
Okay, as far as I'm concerned, that's where I wanted to open it up for questions anyway. So if people want to join in, you're very welcome to.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. Very interesting presentations. Okay, we are going to open the Q&A sessions. If you do have the questions, you may ask directly to Prof. Or you may write down the questions through the meeting chat. I can read them for you on your behalf. Okay, anyone? Okay, I'm going to start first. I have actually two questions, Prof. The first thing is regarding your study. Do you see that the results of your study may possess any sample selection bias, Prof? Because let's say the selection of, the selection of participants who let's say who took the who sit for the CPA exams may have a higher socioeconomic status, or may, let's say, more ambitious than the individuals who did not sit for the exam. So that is the first question. So what do you think about it, Prof?
Yes, I think that's a valid point. I think the whole self-selection issue is quite an important one. And yes, the people who got to this exam, they've gone through quite a few barriers already. They've done their university education. They've probably got a job at a good accounting firm that will support them to do the exam. So that may be a bit of a bias. The other thing that's related to that is, what about the people who failed the exam? How, maybe they would have been really good accountants, but we don't know. And there's a big limitation with that kind of study. That, there's some people in our exam that just scraped through. They just got the pass mark and no more. And then there might have been someone who got 1 mark less than that, and that person failed the exam. It would be really interesting to know whether the person who failed the exam would be a good auditor. But of course, we'll never know. They're not in the data.
So let's say if you do with the data that you have, is it possible to look at this issue?
the issue of the socioeconomic status, I don't know.
No, we don't have it, right?
I don't think so, no. Why do you think it would make a difference?
No, in Indonesia, the individuals who sit for the exam, actually, there is a very interesting background of the professional exams in Indonesia. Prior to 5 years ago, some selected universities, the accounting graduates of several selected universities, including Universitas Diponegoro, were automatically entitled for the professional certifications. We call it the CA, automatically, all the accounting graduates. But then the government changed their regulation, and then all the students, regardless of whether they came from the accounting or non-accounting, have to sit for the exams. So the interest of the accounting students who sit for the exams reduced drastically. So we don't have any sufficient data to say that the individuals who sit for the exams are more ambiguous, are more obsessed with their career success, and since the exam fees are a little bit higher, the students who sit for the exams have higher socioeconomic status than the students who did not sit for the exam. So perhaps if we can look at the sample selection issue, if we run the sample selection bias, then we may also look at this possibility that. So this is just my opinion, Prof.
Yes. And I'm just trying to think of ways we could do it. And yes, one way might be to look at different universities.
Right.
I think in Finland, the universities, as far as I can tell, seem to be more or less equal. You don't have, like in some countries, you have very high status elite universities and very low status universities. And if that was the case, it might be interesting to see if graduates from different places have different career success. But that doesn't seem to be something that we can use in the Finnish case.
Right. Okay, bro. And there is a question here from Ratna Chandra. How to measure audit quality in remote audit method during the pandemic? You previously mentioned that the international standard of auditing do not encourage the use of modern data techniques in auditing, right? And during the first part of your presentation, but during this pandemic, the use of the modern data techniques may be more emphasis than during the pandemic. So is it possible that right after the pandemic, the use of the modern data techniques, the data analytics may be encouraged by the regulators?
A good question, yes. I'm not aware of it happening actually, but it does seem like a reasonable thing to do. The pandemic had much less effect on auditing than we expected. I know when the first lockdown happened back in March last year, the audit firms were all sending out newsletters saying, you must expect that there'll be a lot more qualified audit opinions this year because we won't be able to do our audit properly, or the companies might have difficulty surviving. But as it turned out, there were very few companies where the audit opinion changed at all, and the auditors seemed to be able to carry on. I know they had difficulty doing work because the auditors were at home trying to do their audit remotely, trying to get information from the clients, but they seemed to manage to do that. And I've seen a study in the United States on the same kind of issue, and in that case, the number of going concern audit opinions actually went down. So in the pandemic year, there were fewer companies getting this note from the auditors saying there's uncertainty about the company surviving.
Right. Okay, thank you, Prof. Is there any question from the participants? Oh, right, from Dr. Surya. Please.
Thank you, Pak Buat.
Okay, Doctor.
Good afternoon, Professor Hai.
Hi.
Yeah, I read your paper and I'm interested in why, based on your findings. It seems that it has a different result between female and male accountant. Why it, the higher score only apply for a male accountant for the higher compensation. And also in Swedish, yeah, why for female accountant has negative effect. That's my first question. And my second question, something to do with audit technology. Right now, I had my father run a local accounting firm. We are a small accounting firm here, but because of our size, audit technology is very expensive. I would like to ask you, is there any a cheaper audit technology that for a small accounting firm can access and can use? Thank you, Professor.
Okay, thank you. Yes, why are the results different from men and women? And well, it really surprised us, and we didn't expect that, although there are other studies that suggest that women aren't necessarily treated well by corporations. I've presented this at a seminar where people were in the room with me, and you can get a slightly different dynamic in that case. And when I presented the results, all the men are scratching their head and saying, well, why would that be? I don't understand why women would be paid less. Where the women tended to be nodding their heads and saying, yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing that happened to me. I got promoted, I got given all of the responsibilities, but I didn't get the same pay rise as the man sitting next to me. And I think some people say that it's prejudice within the system, so the company doesn't treat their women as well. Other people say it's more to do with psychology, that men are brought up to be more competitive and they're more likely to make demands. So, you're a man, you get given more responsibility, you might be feel more comfortable going to your boss and saying, you need to give me a pay rise because I've got this extra responsibility. Where a woman, in some cultures anyway, might be more inclined to say, well, it's not for me to ask for the pay rise. If I deserve a pay rise, I'll wait for them to give it to me. So all of those things, I guess we can't really find out from this kind of data, but it would be interesting to know. I guess we're probably not really the right team to investigate it too much further because there's 4 men and 1 woman on our group. I think the way to find out more would be some kind of qualitative study using interviews, but you probably need to be mainly women asking the questions to really get good answers from other women. If I went and asked a whole lot of women accountants about their income, maybe if there's some kind of a cultural effect about men, that might prevent the results from coming out. The Swedish one, I'm not quite sure which one you're referring to.
The relationship seems negative in Swedish, female compensation.
Right.
Yeah. As you previously mentioned that the Prime Minister and the important position, women is treated equally. But why? It's surprising me. The result is negative in terms of compensation.
Yes. It's this result here, isn't it, in table 5, the Swedish, this negative coefficient on there. And again, I guess it's just an even more extreme version of the same effect, that the men ask for the pay rise when they're given more responsibility. The women don't. I guess we could dig into the Swedish female one a little bit more with some interaction terms, because the Swedish part, I guess we've got Swedish female and exam score. But yes, I'm not happy with finding out things like this. I'd much rather everyone was treated fairly, but I guess we can only report the results that we really find out. Finally, about audit technology being very expensive. Yes, it's true, and I guess that's definitely a disadvantage in making these changes, and it might be why the International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board has been so slow, because any change where people are using more technology, it's going to be much easier for the big international firms to start using it first compared to the local firms. I'm not really aware of any particular software, but we'd like to think that as this kind of thing develops, maybe the companies who make accounting packages, I don't know if Xero and MYOB are the main ones that are used in Indonesia. Certainly in Australia and New Zealand, they seem to be the leading ones. And those companies are quite innovative, and I might like to think that they'd be working on innovative software. A lot of it might be to do just with being able to use inquiry languages. I know I've talked to some auditors that say they can do a lot with Excel spreadsheets, but of course, they can't do nearly as much as some specific software would use.
All right, thank you, Prof. Next, Dr. Dwi.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Fuad. Professor Hey, it's very interesting paper, but I would like to discuss about the measurement of audit quality variables, which is in your paper. It is measured using absolute discretionary accrual and modified audit opinion. Yeah. As we know, there are many proxy measure audit quality, which is input-based measure, such as auditor size, audit fee, and then industry specialist auditor, and output-based measurement, such as discretionary accrual, going concern opinion, audit time lag, and restatement. Maybe you can give advice for us in what situation or research context do we choose audit quality measure or proxy?
Yes, very good question. And there are those other measures, and something that we could possibly look at is, do we include the others? We've, I think, included audit fees somewhere in our other analysis. We were looking at it not so much as a quality measure as a measure of the importance of the clients, but it's something we could look at, and we could certainly look at fees adjusted for other variables, specialization, and audit report lag is a very standard measure to use, and I guess easy to use. Maybe we could be including that as well. What are the best measures to use? I guess it seems to be these days that one measure is not enough, that the research journals don't seem to like studies that use just one measure of quality. So you should use more than one and hopefully get something similar. And I guess we thought we were using the most obvious ones, absolute value of discretionary accruals and going concern opinions. We could have explored those discretionary accruals a bit more. Sometimes people use positive income increasing versus income decreasing modified accruals, or we could have used lag, but this study becomes very long and unwieldy if you have more measures than that. So I guess my advice would be, if you're measuring audit quality, try to have more than one measure. I don't think you need to have every one that you can think of. You've got two reasonably viable measures that ought to work. You probably know the study by DeFond and Jang. I think it's in Journal of Accounting and Economics. There is that paper, and it has a table of the different audit quality measures and talks about the advantages and disadvantages of them.
Okay, so the point is we cannot only use one measure. It's better to use more than one measure to measure audit quality variables.
It seems to be the impression I get from presenting at conferences and from submitting to journals, that if you have just one quality measure, people are going to say, well, maybe that's just unique to that measure. Maybe you get a different result if you use another measure. If you use two of the measures and you get some results that are reasonably similar, then that's a lot more convincing.
Thank you, Professor.
All right. Is there anyone else? There is a question in the meeting chat from Dr. Arum Sikit. Arum, are you going to ask a question directly, or I will read this question on your behalf? Okay, I think I'm just going to read the question on your behalf. From Pak Arum Sigit to Prof. Hey, you mentioned that there is little or no association between exam results and audit quality. So if it is assumed that the exam result represent competence, can it be concluded that the auditor competence provides little or no influence to the audit quality? So this is a very interesting topic. Furthermore, do you think other factors such as integrity, independence, and various soft skills might provide higher influence to audit quality? So what do you think about these questions, Prof?
A very good question. So yes, I guess we were thinking more in terms of, does the exam measure the characteristics that it's trying to? So does the exam measure something else? Like maybe it's just an intelligence test, or maybe it's a test of a certain type of skill that some people have and other people don't. But the question's suggesting that if the exam is a good measure of accounting quality, why don't we get significant results? And yes, maybe that suggests that audit quality is either audit quality by discretionary accruals is not a good measure, or what else? I guess there could be other factors that play a part in it. And of course there are when it comes to the discretionary accruals. That depends a lot on the company as well as on the auditor. So maybe it is something to do with the board of directors or the industry or something like that that we haven't controlled for. Sorry, I know the last part of the question was really interesting, but I can't quite remember what it was now.
It's about the other factors such as integrity, independence, and various soft skills may provide higher influence to audit quality, which is part of your earlier presentation.
Right, yes. Yes, definitely. So I guess maybe that could be one interpretation of the results, that the exam measures certain type of skills. So it measures the skills that it takes to get promoted to partner, and it measures the skills that it takes to get a higher salary, but it doesn't measure the particular skills that it takes to do better auditing. So the integrity and the independence are different skills. They're not measured by the exam, and they are important in audit quality. So, you know, it does make you think that perhaps an auditing exam of the kind that we've got at the moment doesn't cover all the skills that we need. And I don't know how you would test someone's integrity.
We don't have that kind of data, right? To test the impact of the soft skills to the career success.
That's right. Yes, yes, but they could definitely be part of it.
Right. And I'm also, this is a very interesting issue, Prof, particularly when we look at the impact of the exam results to the, let's say, to the discretionary accrual. And there may be two different units of analysis, right? So the first one is from the partners of the who conducted, who set for the exams, and another one is the auditee. Am I right? The auditee, the auditees, right? So how did you relate these two different units of analysis in your study?
When it comes to audit quality, you mean? Or?
Yep, when it comes to the audit quality and the exam results.
Yes, so I guess we tried to control for as much as we could of what relates to the auditee. So we've got in there things like the risk and in the calculation of discretionary accruals, we've taken into account size and growth over the last year and a whole lot of other variables like that. But yes, the whole area of discretionary accruals and measurement of audit quality is an area that I think that still doesn't work terribly well. When discretionary accruals were first being used in the 1990s, I thought they were an extremely bad idea. I thought they would never catch on. But now, a few years later, they're used very widely, and they're in a lot of studies, and it's, I guess people accept that they're the best measure of financial reporting quality or auditing quality, the best measure that we've got so far, even if they're not very good. But they're still not a terribly good measure of whatever it is we're trying to achieve. And maybe as time goes by, people are going to find better earnings quality measures, and the picture on these kinds of issues will become much clearer.
Right, it's clear now. Thank you very much, Prof. Okay, is there anyone else? Just please raise your hand. Okay, there is a question, and this is, sorry if this question is a little bit methodological, regarding the use of the null hypothesis instead of the alternate hypothesis in your hypothesis statement. Is there any particular reasons why you use different types of hypothesis statement, the null and another in the alternate hypothesis, in the form of the alternate hypothesis?
Not really. I don't think it was more to do with just which one of us of the authors was writing a particular part. Some people like the null hypothesis, some like the alternate. It wasn't really a particularly deep discussion of the research. And I think when we submit it to a journal, you have to see what the journal's preferences and just make sure we've stated it consistently that way.
I see. All right, thank you, Prof. Guys, to all the participants, one last question, please. If there is no, I think there was an issue with the allow participants to chat, to rename themselves, to unmute themselves. I already put them on. So, okay, if there is no further questions, I think I just would like to say thank you very much to Prof. David Hay, and very interesting presentation. And we are really looking forward to have you to visit Indonesia, Prof. Have you ever visited Indonesia before?
I've made a brief visit to Manado, which is in Sulawesi.
Right.
A conference there, but I've never been to
Semarang. In Java, not yet.
No, that's right. I've never been to Java. I've certainly never been to Undip.
Oh, you should, Prof. Once this pandemic is over, we can invite you to visit Semarang. It is 1 hour flight from Jakarta. So yeah, so or you may use the land transportation. It's just 5 hours away from Jakarta, and there are many beautiful places that you can explore. But the beaches are not that as beautiful as ones in Manado, definitely.
Right.
All right.
I'd really like to do that, so let's hope someday we can.
Yeah, please. We can invite you, Prof. So once this lockdown is over, once this pandemic is over, we are very happy. We are very fortunate if you can come and visit, and we will invite you to pay a visit to Semarang, to Undip, to Diponegoro University.
Right. Okay.
Right. Okay, Prof. Thank you very much again, Prof. David Hay. Thank you very much to all the participants. And just one last remarks, because this is just for our documentation. Can you please turn on your camera, because we are going to take a screenshot of you all. All right, thank you. There is Pak Puji. Hello, Pak Puji. Hello, Pak. All right, thank you very much. We are going to take some screenshots, one page. All right, thank you very much, guys. It's done now. We were attended by more than 200 participants. So thank you very much, Prof. David Hay. I hope to see you all again in the very near future.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks very much to you, Fuad, and thanks very much to the distinguished speakers who introduced me, and to all of you for being there. I really enjoyed the presentation, and they were very good questions.
All right, thank you very much, Prof.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. See you. Terima kasih Bapak Ibu semuanya. Kita akhiri pertemuan ini. Sampai ketemu lagi di Accounting Forum berikutnya. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye. Good afternoon, Prof.
Bye.
Bye. Oke, terima kasih.
Makasih Pak Fuad.
Oke, Pak Ratna, makasih.
Terima kasih Pak Fuad.
Terima kasih Pak. Baik, kita.
Selamat siang Pak Fuad, salam sehat selalu.
Ya, selamat siang Ibu.
Terima kasih Pak. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Makasih semuanya. Kita end meetingnya. Sehat-sehat selalu Bapak Ibu. Selamat siang. Assalamualaikum.